The first time I met Diana Thompson, she greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So you're the woman who stole my Michael," she said, measuring me up and down with a glance that could freeze hell over. That should have been my first warning sign, but love makes us blind to red flags sometimes. 3 years later, I was about to discover just how far my mother-in-law would go to prove I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I always dreaded our monthly Sunday brunches at Diana's house. The tradition had started right after Michael and I got married, her way of keeping the family close. But sitting at her perfectly set table, watching her scrutinize my every move, felt more like being under a microscope than bonding with family. "More coffee, Anna." Diana's voice broke through my thoughts that morning, sickeningly sweet as she held up her sterling silver coffee pot. The same one she'd bragged about being a family heirloom, only for true Thompsons, at least a dozen times. "Yes, please," I replied, pushing my cup forward. My hands were shaking slightly. They always did these days. The fertility treatments were taking their toll, though we hadn't told anyone in the family yet. Michael squeezed my knee under the table, a silent gesture of support. Diana poured the coffee with practiced grace, that same artificial smile plastered on her face. "You seem tired, dear. Not sleeping well?" The concern in her voice sounded genuine, but I'd learned to read between the lines of her carefully crafted comments. "Just busy with work," I answered, taking a sip of the coffee. The taste hit my tongue. Something was off. Too sweet with an unfamiliar chalky undertone. I glanced at Michael, but he was engrossed in conversation with his sister, Jessica, about their father's upcoming retirement. "Don't you think you work too much?" Diana pressed, watching me intently. A woman needs to focus on her home, her family, especially when children come along. Another pointed reminder of her disapproval of my career as a pediatric nurse. I took another sip, trying to place the strange taste. "What kind of coffee is this?" Diana's smile widened, triumph gleaming in her eyes. "Oh, it's not coffee, dear. I mixed in some baby formula. You need practice being a mother, after all. Can't even tell the difference between coffee and formula. How will you handle a real baby?" The room fell silent. Michael stopped mid-sentence, turning to stare at his mother. Jessica's fork clattered against her plate. I sat there, the cup still raised halfway to my lips, as the reality of what she'd done sank in. "Mom." Michael's voice was sharp with disbelief. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about my future grandchildren," Diana replied calmly, spreading butter on her croissant as if she hadn't just admitted to tampering with my drink. "Anna clearly needs guidance. Better she learns now than after the baby comes." My hands were shaking harder now, but not from the fertility medications. "You had no right," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "No right?" Diana laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "I have every right to ensure my grandchildren will be properly cared for. And frankly, dear, you're not ready. A mother knows these things." I reached for my purse, fingers fumbling with the zipper. The doctor's letter was there, folded neatly beside my wallet. We hadn't planned to share our struggles with fertility yet, but Diana had forced my hand. "Actually," I said, pulling out the envelope, "you don't know anything." My voice grew stronger with each word. "You don't know about the 3 years of trying. You don't know about the fertility treatments. You don't know about the failed IVF attempts." Diana's smile faltered as I unfolded the letter. Michael reached for my hand, but I was already standing, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You don't know about the hormone injections I give myself every day. You don't know about the bruises on my stomach from the needles. You don't know about the countless nights I've cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'll ever be able to give Michael a child." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Jessica had her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. Michael stood beside me, his arm around my waist, supporting me as I finally confronted his mother. But most of all, I continued, my voice cracking slightly, "You don't know what it's like to want something so badly, to try so hard, only to have someone like you mock my ability to be a mother." I held out the doctor's letter, my hands steady now. "Read it. Read about how hard we've been trying. Read about the procedures, the medications, the side effects. Read about how your son has been by my side through every disappointment, every failed attempt, while you've been judging me from your ivory tower." Diana's face had lost its color. She took the letter with trembling fingers, her eyes scanning the medical terminology, the treatment plans, the diagnosis of unexplained infertility. Ida didn't know, she whispered, the paper shaking in her hands. No, you didn't, I agreed. Because you never bothered to ask. You were too busy trying to prove I wasn't good enough for your son to see who I really am. Michael stepped forward, his voice tight with anger. Mom, what you did today, tampering with Anna's drink, mocking her ability to be a mother, that's absolutely unacceptable. Michael, I was only trying to help, Diana protested weakly, but the excuse sounded hollow, even to her own ears. Help? He laughed bitterly. By humiliating my wife? By making light of something we've been struggling with for years? That's not help, Mom. That's cruelty. I gathered my things, suddenly needing to be anywhere but there. The walls of Diana's perfect house seemed to be closing in, the air thick with unspoken words and shattered pretenses. We're leaving, Michael announced, helping me with my coat. And until you can understand how deeply you've hurt us, how wrong your actions were, we won't be back for Sunday brunch. As we walked to the door, Jessica stood up. I'm so sorry, Anna, she said softly. I had no idea what you were going through. Her glare at her mother spoke volumes about whose side she was on. The last thing I saw as we left was Diana, still holding the doctor's letter, her perfectly crafted world crumbling around her like the untouched croissant on her plate. The weeks following the Sunday brunch incident were oddly quiet. No calls from Diana, no guilt-tripping messages, no flying monkeys sent to defend her actions. The silence felt both liberating and unsettling, like the calm before a storm. Michael and I focused on our fertility treatments, finding strength in each other during the endless cycle of hope and disappointment. One evening, as I prepared another hormone injection, my phone lit up with Jessica's name. Anna, her voice was hesitant. I need to tell you something about Mom. I sat on the edge of our bed, the unopened syringe still in my hand. What's wrong? I found something in her study yesterday when I was helping her organize some old papers. Jessica paused, taking a deep breath. There were letters, dozens of them, from a fertility clinic, dated almost 30 years ago. My hand tightened around the phone. What? Mom struggled to conceive too, Jessica continued softly. For years, apparently, before she had Michael. The letters detail failed treatments, medications, everything you're going through now. She never told us. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Deanna, the perfect mother, the woman who seemed to take such joy in criticizing my maternal potential, had walked the same painful path I was on now. There's more, Jessica added. I confronted her about it. She broke down, Anna. I've never seen her cry like that. She said watching you and Michael go through this brings back all the pain and fear she felt back then. She's not handling it well, obviously, but it explains some things. I finished, my anger toward Diana beginning to shift into something more complicated. That night, I told Michael about his mother's secret. He sat in stunned silence for a long time, processing the fact that his own existence had been a hard-won miracle. Why didn't she ever tell me? He finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. All these years, watching us struggle, she could have shared her experience, supported us instead of lashing out and trying to control everything. I completed his thought. Maybe it was too painful to revisit those memories. Maybe seeing us go through it made her feel helpless all over again. The next day, an unexpected package arrived at our door. Inside was Deanna's sterling silver coffee pot, the precious Thompson family heirloom, wrapped in tissue paper. A note was attached in Deanna's elegant handwriting. I received this from my mother-in-law after I finally became pregnant with Michael. I hated it at first, seeing it as another reminder of her judgment and criticism. Years later, I understood it was her way of finally accepting me as part of the family. I've been holding on to it, waiting to pass it down. But I've been waiting for the wrong reasons. It belongs to you now, not because of any future grandchildren, but because you are already part of this family. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. Diana. Michael found me crying in the kitchen, clutching the coffee pot and the note. That evening, we made a decision that would change everything. I asked Jessica to arrange a meeting with Diana, neutral ground at a small cafe downtown. When we arrived, Diana was already there, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. The perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit were still in place, but her usual armor of superiority was missing. Thank you for coming, she said quietly as we sat down. Her eyes fell on a small gift bag I brought. What's that? I pulled out a home pregnancy test from the bag, negative like so many before it, and placed it on the table between us. Diana's eyes widened in confusion. I bring one to every appointment with our fertility specialist. I explained, my voice gentle but firm, as a reminder that every negative test is part of our journey, not a judgment of my worth as a woman or my potential as a mother. Tears welled in Diana's eyes. I used to keep mine too, she whispered, in a shoebox under the bed. Robert, my husband, he never knew. I couldn't bear to let anyone see my failure. It's not failure, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. It's hope. Every test, every treatment, every disappointment, they are all proof that we're strong enough to keep trying, to keep hoping. Deanna's composure cracked entirely. I was so afraid, she admitted, tears flowing freely now. Watching you and Michael go through this, seeing the same pain I felt. I thought if I could control everything, protect you both somehow. I'm so sorry, Anna. The things I said, what I did with the formula, I became exactly the kind of mother-in-law I used to hate. Michael, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Mom, we don't need you to be in control. We need you to be on our side, to share your experience, your strength, to help us hope. Diana nodded, squeezing my hand. I have a box of my own old pregnancy tests in the attic, she said with a watery smile, and all the letters from my doctors. If you'd like, maybe we could look at them together. Share our stories. 6 months after the coffee pot incident, I found myself sitting in Diana's attic, surrounded by decades-old medical records and yellowed photographs. What started as one afternoon of sharing stories had evolved into regular meetings between us, each one peeling back another layer of understanding. This was after my 4th failed IVF, Diana said, pointing to a photo of her younger self. The woman in the picture was smiling, but I recognized the shadow behind her eyes, the same one I saw in my mirror every morning. I nearly gave up that month. What made you keep going? I asked, carefully placing the photo back in its album. Diana smiled, touching a silver locket around her neck. Robert's mother, the same woman who gave me that coffee pot, came to me one day with this locket. Inside was a picture of her own mother, who had tried for 7 years before having her. She told me that sometimes the greatest blessings take the longest to arrive. As Diana spoke, Jessica appeared at the attic door with fresh tea in the sterling silver coffee pot that now traveled between our houses, a symbol of our shared journey rather than a weapon of judgment. The doctor called yesterday, I said quietly, accepting a cup from Jessica. Both women froze, aware of our latest round of treatment. They want to try a new protocol. Diana reached for my hand, her grip firm and supportive. No criticism, no unsolicited advice, just presence. Whatever you decide, we're here. That new protocol led to more appointments, more injections, more waiting. But this time was different. When the hormone medications made me emotional, Diana brought over her famous chicken soup and shared stories about her own experiences with the drugs. When I had to give myself shots, she would video call and talk me through it, remembering her own fear of needles. Even the Sunday brunches resumed, transformed from tense obligations into genuine family time. Diana still hosted, but gone were the passive-aggressive comments and judgment. Instead, she shared family stories, often revealing her own struggles and mistakes, making herself human in a way she'd never allowed before. 3 months into the new treatment, I woke up feeling different. I couldn't explain it, but something had changed. With trembling hands, I took a pregnancy test, the 100th, perhaps, in our journey. 2 lines appeared. I took 3 more tests, all positive. Michael and I waited until after the first ultrasound to tell anyone. When we were sure, really sure, we planned a special Sunday brunch. As everyone settled around Diana's dining table, I pulled out a small gift box and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, carefully untying the ribbon. "Open it," I encouraged, ripping Michael's hand under the table. Inside was a coffee cup, one of those novelty mugs, with "World's Most Transformed Mother-in-Law" printed on it. Beneath it lay the ultrasound picture. Diana stared at the image, her hands shaking. Are you?" "Yes," I whispered, tears flowing freely. "You're going to be a grandmother." The celebration that followed was unlike anything I could have imagined a year ago. Diana hugged me, really hugged me, both of us crying. Jessica was jumping up and down, already planning a baby shower. But the most beautiful moment came later, when the excitement had settled. Diana disappeared into the attic and returned with a small, worn shoebox. Inside were her old pregnancy tests, dozens of negatives, and one precious positive that had finally brought Michael into the world. "I think," she said, placing my positive test next to hers, "it's time to start a new collection. One of joy instead of fear. One of celebration instead of shame." As I write this now, my hand resting on my growing belly, I can't help but marvel at how life unfolds. The woman who once slipped baby formula into my coffee to prove I wasn't ready for motherhood is now my strongest supporter. She's transformed from a critical mother-in-law into a trusted confidant, from an adversary into family. Yesterday, Diana brought over a baby book, not like the mocking one from before, but her own, filled with notes and advice from her pregnancy with Michael. Inside the cover, she'd written, "For my daughter, not just in-law, who taught me that the strongest mothers aren't the ones who never struggle, but the ones who never stop hoping." The sterling silver coffee pot sits on my kitchen counter now, ready for the next Sunday brunch. Sometimes when I look at it, I remember that painful day when Diana tried to prove I wasn't good enough. But mostly, I see it as a reminder that even the deepest wounds can heal, that understanding can grow in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the longest journeys lead us exactly where we need to be. As for the baby formula, Diana laughed about it last week, saying, "Next time you come over, I promise, just coffee, though you might want to switch to decaf now." And for the first time, her smile reached her eyes.